Hi, I'm Elise Naramore. Remember that the primary purpose of this video series is to explain how the learning progression method is implemented, with a special focus on the logistics of grading. This is part 6, in which you will learn about the types of feedback students receive and how to use it to figure out how students are doing. This video should give you a better understanding of the system overall, so that in Module 7 we can discuss how students earn a particular grade and what that means at different points during the year. Traditional grades are evaluative. Research shows that students generally stop reading once they've looked at the grades and then compared themselves to how others in their class performed. Narrative comments go unattended to, as if the grade itself erases all of the descriptive feedback that a teacher has provided, whether it's good or bad. This research is one of the main foundations of this strategy. We try to only use descriptive feedback tied tightly to the outcomes that we desire. Because we are mandated to post grades periodically, we mostly delay grades as much as possible. Students must read and respond to the annotations and understand the meaning of the scores that they receive. Descriptive feedback provides information to a student that is specifically related to the learner outcomes. It highlights what has been done well and prompts further thought. Through comments and questions, it models the use of language in the outcomes, and if used in assessment for learning, provides opportunities for students to improve their work. As detailed in Part 5, scores do not correlate to grades, and the achievement levels do not inherently correlate to good versus bad grades. One of my favorite consequences of this is that I can be completely honest about the current skill level demonstrated by student work. We keep identifying what to address in the next attempt in order to improve, if improvement is even the goal. Sometimes maintenance is. As will be thoroughly discussed in Part 8, the feedback received will depend upon what each individual student is aiming for. While all students initially begin at the same level, they will over time spread out, with some moving ahead more quickly than others. With descriptive feedback, I can tell student A what they need to do to move from beginning to developing, for example, but I can tell student B what needs to be done to move from developing to proficient. In this way, there is no overload and no undue stress. We focus on just the very next step. This is similar to when you're driving somewhere that has about 10 different steps in the path. Do you need to know steps 7, 8, and 9 while you're on step 1, or even when you're at step 4? It's too much to hold in your head, so we focus on what's next only. The feedback may vary. Sometimes I score individual assignments and I provide the feedback. Other times I go over the assignment as a class, and students are responsible to annotate their own work or even to provide comments on their peers' work. There is no one right way to do this, and we vary it based on the current needs of the class and sometimes just to vary what we do in class. It is much easier to provide tailored feedback if we talk one-on-one. To this end, I make myself available for extra help, either virtually or face-to-face. I have a lot of availability for appointments, and I'll show you how to access that. This is a sample student lab report after it was graded. The left side shows part of that lab report. The right side shows the rubric with the 4 practices used for scoring. On the student's document, I write lots of comments, trying to focus on what to do next time. For example, this student is working at the developing level because they were identifying multiple sources of experimental error, but they were not correct. I inserted 4 comments and questions to try to stimulate thinking about this section so they can do better on the next one. The rubric is populated with the scores on each section and shows the descriptor of each achievement level earned. A teacher's job is tough, and for most of us, grading is the bane of our existence. It invades our evenings and weekends, and most of us do our best to avoid it whenever we can, but we can't. Providing descriptive feedback may initially seem more time-consuming, but I've found that since I'm focused on helping students progress only to the very next level, it actually doesn't usually take more time. Most of the time, it's a lot easier in my opinion. At worst, it's the same. Sometimes that happens when working on higher achievement levels when there's a lot more pieces to check. It can be time consuming. It is impossible to eliminate evaluative feedback altogether in my experience. The best I can do is minimize it as much as possible. If you're in a district where you must give grades weekly, put as much time as possible between the descriptive and the evaluative feedback. If I have to give grades anyway, you might be wondering why I would make all these changes. To explain, I created this comparison chart. Traditional grading is what most of us are familiar with. You may have heard of standards-based grading, which is a method of assessment that focuses on clearly defined levels of achievement in specific content competencies. It's been around for at least 10 years and was our jumping off point until we recognized its limitations. Then we developed the learning progression model. The traditional approach, listen, we've spent our entire lives, both as students and as teachers, thinking of grading as a carrot and stick situation, identifying what students can't do and effectively punishing them for the rate of knowledge acquisition. Our systems are set up to rank students and also to reward them for compliance as opposed to risk-taking. But with standards-based grading, right, which eliminates the influence of non-academic factors on grade determination, the proficiency scales make the expectations of the course explicit, and it's easier to communicate to students why they attain a certain score. However, students still use it to calculate a grade, and they often misinterpret the score, which causes confusion and anxiety. Furthermore, proponents of SBG usually allow retakes, which have many negative consequences for both the student and the teacher, namely in terms of unmanageable workloads. This is discussed in detail in Module 4. It's also challenging to provide feedback in a timely and effective manner in this method, which is something that's really important to me. The learning progression method addresses the shortcomings of both traditional and SBG by focusing on improvement over time. Stressing learning as a process, not an endpoint, encouraging risk-taking, and creating a positive teacher-student relationship. In the next module, we will discuss how we use the scores to translate into traditional grades.